The post-apocalyptic genre has been with us for ages, though its face has changed over time. It creeps into every corner of media, each title planting its own vision of the end, be it a nuclear fire, rogue AI, or unstoppable plagues. Mary Shelley's The Last Man is often hailed as the first post-apocalyptic sci-fi novel. Metamorphosis Alpha broke the ground as the first tabletop RPG in the genre, and a Danish film from 1916, The End of the World, stands as the earliest cinematic take. In video games, Wasteland blazed the trail in 1988, yet Fallout series towers above the rest. Released by Interplay in 1998, Fallout spawned sequels, spin-offs, an unreleased game inspired countless others, and even landed its own TV show. Today the post-apocalyptic landscape is more crowded than ever, with a flood of both blockbusters and hidden gems games released over the past 15 years. But let me shine a light on a title so obscure that most of you have probably never heard of its name. It surfaced only in a handful of European countries, Germany, Poland, the Czech Republic, Russia and France, with even a listing in Taiwan. Drawing inspiration from Fallout, Mad Max and Waterworld, this is Germany's unique spin on the end of the world. The Fallout connection runs deeper than mere homage, but before we get there, let's rewind and see how the game came to life. In 1993, after cutting his teeth in the game industry, Carsten Stresse launched Silver Style Studio in Berlin. At the time, Germany lagged behind its European neighbors and the US in gaming innovation. Stresse saw his homeland stuck in the mid-90s and set out to put Germany on the global map for quality games and technology. He didn't wake up one morning and decide to make games. He brought years of experience in game design and even dabbled in freelance graphic design. In a forum Q&A about Soldiers of Anarchy, one of Silver Style's early titles, he recalls releasing his first game for the Commodore 64 back in 1988, all while studying business administration, so this new venture was built on a solid foundation. In its early days, the studio churned out budget licensed titles, think boxing and football management games, thanks to support from RTL New Media. These local releases kept the lights on, built Silver Style's reputation as a dependable developer, and opened doors to industry connections. Before long, they were striking deals with heavyweights like Joe Wood Productions, Atari and HQ. By the late 90s, Silver Style pivoted toward role-playing and tactical games. Their first foray was Gorasu, The Legacy of the Dragon, a CRPG inspired by Baldur's Gate, released in 2001. Reviews were a mixed bag. Some accused it of being a little too faithful to its muse, and bugs and translation hiccups didn't help its case. The next year, Silver Style released one of its best received games, Soldiers of Anarchy, a real-time squad-based tactics game. It actually looks like a lot of fun. In the same forum I mentioned earlier, Carsten Stresse said the game had been in development for just over 2 years, at the same time as Gorasul. That might explain why both games had their issues. SOA had plenty of bugs too, but most people agree it was still enjoyable despite the technical problems. The game suffered some changes for North America. The first was the exclusion of the turn-based combat mode. Due to time constraints, the devs couldn't include it. That was not the case for its European and Asian releases. However, at a later date, players could download a patch to restore it. Soldiers of Anarchy wasn't the first choice for the game's title. It went through a couple of iterations. The first was Unborn because of the in-game code. The natural resistance was forced, presumably by the publisher, but everyone hated it because no one could pronounce it. In the end, Soldiers of Anarchy was the compromise. Another fun fact, as Stresse writes, was renaming the in-game code for the North American release. It changed from Church of the Unborn Child to Church of the Undead Child, and the Unborn Knights became Undead Knights. The US publisher feared backlash from radical church groups and anti-abortion activists. However, there is one place where the devs forgot to correct this and got past the publisher. I couldn't find any sales numbers, but it must have done well enough to keep the studio going since they kept making games. Then came what I like to call Germany's answer to Mad Max, a game that borrows from the wilds of Waterworld, the grit of Fallout, and the chaos of the Australian outback. In 2004, Silver Style unleashed The Fall, Last Days of Gaia, a real-time tactical game with pulse function set in a sun-scorched post-apocalyptic world. It launched in November 2004, but only in select regions, mainly Germany and possibly France, though I'm not certain about the latter. Reviews were a mixed bag, thanks largely to a swarm of bugs and crashes at launch. I'll dig into why The Fall stumbled out of the gate soon. In 2006, everything changed for the studio, for better or worse. Carsten Stresse, along with Markus Malti, who has expertise in game marketing through his involvement with Sega, Big Ben and Infogrames, formed a publishing body, the Game Company. As a result, Silver Style became a subsidiary of TGC and for the third time in their history focused on an entirely different genre, mostly adventure games, leaving behind what made them known. This doesn't mean the studio started releasing low-quality titles. On the contrary, after Simon the Sorcerer's failed attempt to escape the 2D plane, Silver Star released the third and fourth installments to a positive reception. During this period, they also released two games I'm interested in playing: Eva Light of Magic and Power and Going Downtown, released in 2007 and 2008 respectively. Both got mostly positive reviews. In 2008, Silver Style announced on its website its upcoming action-adventure game, The Dark Eye Demonicon, based on the German tabletop role-playing series. However, the game didn't progress beyond the concept phase and a demo level. In the midst of developing it, in July 2010, Markus Mauti and Carsten Stresse unexpectedly resigned from the game company. According to an article I found, the reason was a dispute with investors over strategic direction. Only a few days after their decision, TGC filed for insolvency, which severely affected Silver Style. The management promised to seek ways to restructure and save the studio, but around 50 people lost their job. However, this wasn't the end for Silver Style. Calypso Media acquired the rights to Demonicon and along with 17 employees formed Nomena Studios to finish the game. They released only two titles before closing, one which I covered a long time ago, Crux the Big Haste. A very fun and stylish tactical game that in hindsight shows their experience in the genre. Demonicon itself is another can of worms, but that's a story for another video. Meanwhile, Silver Style was revived with the remaining staff under longtime director Ronnie Knaut and changed its name by replacing studios with Entertainment. Besides Demonicon, before closure, they were making The Fall, Mutant City, a point-and-click adventure game set in the same world as The Last Days of Gaia, supposedly continuing the story. It was snatched by F+F Publishing and released to abysmal reviews. Unfortunately, the game was released only in Germany. While writing the script, I noticed the game got a translation patch. I might play it someday. The first and only game by Silver Style Entertainment, The Dark Eye HeroCon Online, was released in 20th of August 2012. It's a browser-based free-to-play MMORPG. Based on screenshots, the game looks beautiful. I wouldn't mind playing an offline version. From a few articles I found, there was interest and positive reception. On 24th of June 2014, the studio filed for insolvency and closed its doors for the last time. Silver Style was a studio brimming with talent, unafraid to leap between genres and experiment. They crafted solid games and took on whatever projects kept the studio afloat. Few developers can claim they have jumped from football simulations to tactical RPGs, then to point-and-click adventure games, and even an MMORPG, all while earning praise along the way. They even dabbled in publishing. Truly, they were gaming's jack of all trades. Back in the day, Silver Style stood shoulder to shoulder with the likes of Piranha Bytes, Phenomic Game Development, Egosoft, and Jaeger before Spec Ops: The Line. Yet those studios built a cult following. Silver Style slipped into obscurity. Their games faded from memory, never quite breaking into mainstream despite coming close more than once. Their titles were notoriously buggy, which put off many players. Now, most are abandonware and not every game has a fan translation patch. The one that truly captured players' hearts was their most ambitious, complete with full English translation and fan-made website cataloging every map, item and secret. Some call it Germany's Fallout, but they see it more as Mad Max, despite its nods to both series and Waterworld. Beyond the post-apocalyptic backdrop, the similarities end there. So grab your makeshift gear, let's trek across the scorched earth that is the development story of The Fall, Last Days of Gaia. The Fall is a post-apocalyptic real-time tactics RPG with a pause function. You know what the inspiration was, but don't get fooled by this. The game has its own identity. There is an interview with Carsten Stresse for website GameFace that shed light on the studio's ambition for the game and, in my opinion, what caused it to end up the way it was released. But let's back up a bit. After the studio decided to develop more mature titles, they wanted their game released in more territories than just Germany, so they needed to strike deals with major publishers. But for the different titles, they decided on different publishing strategies. For Gorosu, they struck a deal with Joe Wood for worldwide distribution. For Soldiers of Anarchy, the territory deal model was chosen. Different continents, different publisher essentially. This minimized the studio's risk if the publisher went bankrupt and improved financial stability. Both games were plagued with translation issues and the voice acting in SOA is questionable at best. In the same interview, Stresse says that The Fall was in development for 2.5 years, including the concept phase, which puts the starting date somewhere around the end of 2001 when Soldiers of Anarchy was about to cross the finish line, and Silver Style went all in on this project. For one, they developed their own engine, Living World Architecture, or LWA for short, which has its own refined vehicle physics proudly boasted by Stresse, something no other RPG had at the time. He's probably right, but the traffic is not exactly refined, it's janky at best. On top of that, they snatched designers Damien Folletto and Jeff Husgis from Blackout Studios after their closure. I told you there was more than just inspiration from Fallout. The same journalist who conducted the interview visited the studio, and his reporting offers an interesting angle on the development and in my opinion provides a lot of insight on what could have led to the game being released as it is. Firstly, from his description, he played an earlier section of the game and for the most part almost everything is in the final product. However, I quickly noticed that some things just aren't in the game. He writes about wasteland warriors fighting against mutants, leaping over dunes in improvised end-of-the-world vehicles, or taking the skies in makeshift flying machines. All this is not true. Yes, they are vehicles, but they are more or less storage boxes on 4 wheels, and they are certainly not any flying machines. They are technically mutants, they show up in the second half of the game, but they are just tall and with grey skin. Along with other stuff I'm going to mention, it shows why the game was released in the state it was, but let's get back on track. The second thing was their proprietary engine LWA. The studio promised very complex system interacting with each other. There were supposed to be rules on how NPCs interact with the world and you. If you befriend someone, they will join you in a fight if they are nearby, or a neutral NPC might decide to attack you if he notices you are losing the fight. They will have their own routines, which is technically true. You're supposed to build relationships with them. They can love, hate, envy you, or develop some kind of preferences, and the engine is supposed to follow all this and follow how you behave. LWA was designed to be powerful, creating a believable dynamic world. Sounds great, right? The truth is, none of this is in the game. The stuff is implemented, but only very rudimentary. There is a day and night cycle, and if one NPC chops wood, he'll go to bed, and on the next day he'll continue. No amount of interaction will change that. Most of the NPCs just stand around to make the place feel livable, and they have one line they can say on repeat. To me, Silver Style sounds overly ambitious. They wanted to create this amazing post-apocalyptic world that even nowadays is hard to pull off. Interactable, livable, real, dynamic NPC behavior with personal traits. In other words, reactive. On top of that, the game was self-funded, which leads me to believe they ran out of money and time and couldn't implement all the features they wanted, polish the game, and maybe most importantly, release it worldwide, which was the goal. Here is the thing. According to Moby Games, the fall was initially published only in Germany and France, with no voice acting, no English translation, riddled with bugs and prone to crashes. It was a disaster. Not everything was lost. In April 2005, Silver Star released extended version which reworks the dialogue, improves the sound and fixes tons of bugs. This version was released in other parts of Europe. The following year, Silver Star released the reloaded version, which is the definitive way to play it and the one I used for the video. It not only expands on the game but also adds more fixes and voice acting, albeit in German. These revisions thought a good thing, along with the lack of English translation and the game self-funding are probably the main reasons the game was unsuccessful. The bugs can't be ignored either, and splitting the release date so much definitely didn't help the game's perception. Speaking of English translation, there was supposedly partially completed one for release in Taiwan. However, I couldn't find any confirmation about this, so take it with a pinch of salt. Despite everything, all the issues and different releases, the game is a blast to play. You don't need to heavily mod it or spend hours to make it work. The whole process is very simple. So before moving on to the game itself, let me explain first what you need to do to enjoy this rough gem. The first and most important thing is which version to download. Any will do the job I guess, but the least work is Reloaded, which is the one I have a physical copy of. This is the most up-to-date version. The others probably require way more troubleshooting because you have to apply patches. Install Reloaded, use the English translation patch, and most importantly, use the Windows search bar to look for this. I'm not going to even try to pronounce it. This will let you change the resolution and few other settings. That's it, simple. I experienced only one crash during my 43 hours of gameplay. All this on Windows 11. Now let's take a stroll through the scorched lands of the fall, last days of Gaia. There are very few sources on the internet that explain how humanity reached this point, as in the game. They are all fine, but I wanted to verify it, so I did the next best thing. Bought a copy of the manual for €10 in pristine condition. It has not only the backstory, but also a lot of information about the skills, leveling up, how things scale with each level, etc. However, it's in German. I'll try to scan it and upload it to the internet archive. I'll post a link if I manage to do this. So what happened that the world turned into a wasteland? 2062. Humanity was already struggling for survival. Rapid technological development was the norm and part of everyday life. The first human clones are quickly followed by mastery of cold fusion and quantum leaps in aerospace technology. The discovery of the first life forms and preparation of the colonization on Mars are met with excitement and calm. Humanity has become numb to the consequences of its own obsessive drive to discovery. Yet no one foresaw that the bold steps toward the new world would make the very end of the old. On On January 21st, 2062, NASA released its plans to colonize Mars using 6 terraformers. They will allow the humans to inhabit the planet by transforming its atmosphere. Ironically, the very threat from which humanity had tried to free itself for decades was now supposed to help liberate Mars. The terraformers were constructed to release an enormous amount of carbon dioxide into the Martian atmosphere at unimaginable speed to trigger global warming and support human life, but it was never meant to be. On October 2nd, 2062, 11 days before the planned launch of Armstrong 1, which was supposed to transport the terraformers to Mars, something unexpected and shocking happened. Previously unknown code has seized control of the machines. Using cyber attacks and brute force, they bypassed all of NASA's security measures and took the entire world hostage. The motives were never uncovered because there were no negotiations. Immediately after the attack, the cult members activated the terraformers and the machines immediately started pumping CO2. In the current day, the reason doesn't matter anymore. The consequences are what continue to torment what's left of humanity. The disaster unfolded in no time. Before the cult members were neutralized and the 6 terraformers were taken back under control, too much CO2 has already been released and it will take centuries for Earth to recover. Experts estimated the temperature will rise by 4 degrees. In reality, it was 10.5. What followed is not hard to imagine. Storms of unimaginable scale swept the cities around the world. Melted ice from the poles allowed the ocean to swallow half of the continents. New diseases covered Earth with a shroud of death. Those who survived found themselves in a world of anarchy and bitter wars over the last remaining sources of drinking water. 21 years later, humanity lives in the age of the storms. Mother Nature continued to take bitter revenge, lashing the earth with scorching hurricanes whose strength exceeds every scale. Food and water are scarce. The only thing that is enough is sand. Humanity is condemned to a life of desolation and constant fear, and death is ever present. Most people will consider it pointless to hop onto hope in such a situation when hope is buried under tons of sand years ago. But the reports about the formation of a new government and the appointment of a president in the southwest of the United States seem to be a small glimmer of light. You lived through the catastrophe of 2062 as a child, so you can vaguely remember better times. Your family was among the few survivors who managed to build a new life after the disaster. But even that fragile stroke of luck did not last. You were out in the Wastelands when your village was attacked by one of the region's gangs. You returned and found nothing but rubble and ashes, and death. For 4 days you buried bodies. Among them, your mother. Your father and sister Annie have disappeared. You don't know whether they are still alive or not. Numbness was followed by grief, and grief was followed by the thought of revenge. You don't know how you're supposed to find the murderers of your family, nor how you'll fight them, but there is no doubt that the deaths of your loved ones and friends must be avenged. Won't be easy, because you are alone and the gangs are overwhelmingly powerful. Only recently did you hear about the new government that is said to have formed in the southwest. Supposedly, there is even someone who calls himself president, and supposedly this president is looking for mercenaries to help bring order and stability. Fate seems to be turning in your favor. As a mercenary of the new government, together with others, you could fight the gangs and perhaps find the murderers of your family. The thought of revenge drives you forward, and so it happens that one morning you find yourself standing before the gates of the new government. What I like about the game's setting, it differentiates how the world ended. The usual ways are either nukes dropping down or some kind of disease ravaging the world. With this in mind, you need to keep your expectations for the world in check. You won't see any mutants, wacky weapons or anything like that. That's why I say it is closer to Mad Max than to Fallout. It's a bit more realistic, everything looks junky and assembled from scrap. Doesn't matter much in the grand scheme of things how the world ended. Even if a bomb drop, it won't change much. But it shows that the world is well thought out and different from what is well established. It feels like a passion project right from the get-go. But before fully immersing in the world of the Fall, let's talk about everything else, starting with the gameplay. The game is a real-time tactical RPG with pause function set in post-apocalyptic America. I've seen it compared to the old Commando series, but since I haven't played them, I can't attest to whether that's true. However, for me, the game is closer to Dungeon Siege. You control a party, pause the game, and equip them with different weapons to specialize them. I'll get to the pause function in a bit, there is a lot to say about it. Just before you are let loose in the world, you have to choose your avatar. It's just how you look. There are very few options, which is kind of disappointing since there is no customization. However, you won't see much of any face. All the things you can wear are visible on the character, including in cutscenes. Some look quite funny. Nevertheless, a couple of more avatars would be much appreciated. What you specialize in is a conversation for later. Once you arrive at the new government HQ, you speak with the president to join them as a mercenary, hoping this will get you closer to finding your father and sister. To become one, you need a pass, a passport or an ID card. It's the same thing. It's simple as talking to one guy. This is your start screen, your ID card. Here you can rename your character, set a birthday, nationality, last residency and life experience. The latter influence your skills, so choose wisely. The physical features probably affect something, but I'm not entirely sure. Also, you can tick to donate your body after death to be consumed. Okay, I don't know what this is all about, but I guess it makes sense in a world with few resources. When you hover over something with the mouse, it will show a description. It makes it easier to remember, and if you need a reminder, the option is there. I didn't check exactly what physical feature affects, if any. It might be insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but I love how the character creation is narratively connected. It wasn't necessary, but it shows the attention to detail the devs are willing to go to. They made the start screen to look like a passport or some official document. This could have easily been the president asking you what you're good at, and a generic start screen shows up, but no, they went the extra mile, and I love them for this. After that, you have 10 points to put in attributes and 50 in skills. Once again, hovering over anything will show a description. Long before playing the game, I watched a video about the fall made by a fellow YouTuber, Salkin. Link to his video in the description. He convinced me to get the reloaded version. He also said one thing I could have followed, but I didn't. Charisma and speech are very important for two reasons: speech checks during some quests and bartering with the traders. Bartering is obvious, but very early on, some quests could be done much faster if you manage to pass what is essentially a speech check. Every time I tried it, I failed because my stats were too low. However, if I'd followed his advice, I would have missed out on other quests and experiences. The gist of it is that every attribute and every skill is important, but you can't be jack of all trades. Depending on what you choose, you can be left out of items, XP, etc. There are a lot of locked chests in the game that need lockpicking skill. I missed out on so many weapons and items, but if you decide to go on that route, you might miss something else. Survival skill is about getting more meat and other resources from dead animals and eventually cooking them. Cooked meat restores much more health than raw, and so on and so forth. This is so cool. The whole game is filled with decisions and options. It's not something earth-shattering, temporary expectations, but I was pleasantly surprised. Depending on how much questing you're doing, you can change some of the other stats significantly. For example, I decided that B, my character, will focus on light weapons, pistols, shotguns, submachine guns, etc. But I completed almost all quests in the game, which eventually maxed out light weapons and allowed me to put more points into heavy. So your initial decisions are not the be-all and end-all. There is a wiggle room. Once you finish distributing points, it's time to assemble the Avengers. I mean your squad. There are quite a few people, but you can only invite 5. Each is good at something. What I did was choose each team member to specialize in different skills I think will be useful. One was good at repairing guns and vehicles and could drive. Others were good with survival. You get the point. I still didn't choose someone that can speak eloquently. Oh well, choices and consequences. Love to see it. There is one more thing. Once you level up, the start screen looks slightly different. It's separated to attributes, skills, talents and reputation. You already know the first two, but the latter are worth looking into as well. Talents are something worth paying attention to. When you level up, you get 10 skill points and you can distribute them as you see fit, but at a certain threshold, or in other words, at a certain number of points put into a skill, you can choose one talent. They add so much to one of your characters. The go-to example for me is Agnes, my healer, so to speak. By the end of the game, I managed to max out her medical skill and I chose for her light wounds, which restores more health when treating someone, resuscitate, revive dead characters, but you have only 5 real-time minutes to do it. They are more unconscious than dying. And finally, regeneration. Speed up the whole group's health regeneration by 20% while they are resting. As you see, they are all useful, but not the only options. There is also alternative medicine, healing with herbs. For weapon talents, it could be accuracy, steady shot, etc. This is a good reason to specialize a character. At the end, I was controlling a walking death squad. Nothing could stop us, except the final area. I got my ass handed to me, but that's a story for later. As for reputation, it's more like a stat screen on what and how much of it the character killed, plus how familiar they are with the weapon used. I think the longer you use one, the better you get at using it, but I'm not sure what exactly it means. I'm just guessing at this point. If you have any idea, let me know in the comments. And while you're down there, be sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this. To be honest, just one character managed to get acquainted with one weapon, and it took a very long time. I was changing them as I saw fit. Once you put together your team, it's time to hit the desolated roads of the Wastelands, find your family, and bring some justice. In other words, shooting a lot of bad guys. The gameplay is actually very simple. You grab your team and click to move them. If enemy appear, you click on them and everyone starts blasting. Depending on the weapon, they might need to get closer to start shooting. All weapons have range, and depending on it, some might start shooting before the others. I'm saying this because noise plays a big factor in this game. It attracts enemies and you can easily be overwhelmed. This is more applicable in the second half of the game when you face more opponents. The ideal approach I found is to take enemies in groups and avoid attracting everyone. If your reticle is red, it means someone in your squad is in range and will start shooting immediately. If it's grey, the team will start walking towards the NPC until they are in range. There are other things to consider before engaging in firefights, such as stance, standing up, kneeling or prone. As you probably guessed, it affects the aiming. In prone position, the squad has the most steady shots, but the terrain isn't flat, so it's another thing to keep in mind. I can't be 100% sure about this, but in some cases I noticed my guys had trouble hitting someone because he was standing at a lower elevation. The tactical gameplay is alright. You can boil it down to point and shoot, kneel or stand up, and you won't be wrong, but you still have to consider terrain elevation, the number of enemies, your loadout, etc. It's not the most in-depth tactical game, but it doesn't have to be. It still requires thinking about how to approach each situation, and a big help for achieving this is the pause function. If you ever played Dungeon Siege, it's almost exactly the same. You can pause the game at any time by pressing the spacebar. However, there is one big difference. You can set up an auto pause under certain conditions. If an enemy detects you, pause. If one of your teammates detects an enemy, pause. If someone drops below 50 or 25% health, pause. You get the point. You have a drop-down menu in the middle of the screen. By default, the game plays like turn-based strategy. It was pausing very often and it got annoying, so I had to minimize it. These 15 options allow you to customize how you want to play it, and it rules. It did save me a lot of times because you wander in these vast open areas and it's easy to miss an enemy sneaking behind your back, especially when you take over a fort where you have to face way more than out in the wild. Since we are on the theme of automation, there is also auto behavior for all the characters, another 15 options. It's like the game will almost play itself with minimal player interaction. I'm over exaggerating, of course. Your squad needs guidance from you and you'll be the person who decides what happens on the battlefield. It's still nice to have a backup plan when things get hectic, more specifically when the characters need to heal themselves without your intervention. There is nothing stopping you from opening all the inventories at once and transferring medpacks or whatever is needed during combat, as long as the characters are close enough. That way you can heal manually, otherwise he or she isn't available. That's one way to maintain the team in the heat of the moment. The biggest draw initially for me was the loot. What I will find in the next settlement or abandoned building, locked chest or dead enemy. Weapons, ammo, junk, boots, armor, gloves, medpacks, meat, etc. There's so much loot to collect. Let's start with the weapons since they are closely tied to the combat. They are separated in 6 categories: close combat, light and heavy, sniper rifles and throwables. I didn't use any melee weapons because I never invested points in the close combat skill. It was kinda hard to justify bringing a knife into a gunfight. You have brass knuckles, baseball bats, a machete, knives and even a chainsaw. There are plenty of options. Some of the later weapons I found quite enticing, but it was already too late by then. I think their benefit is that they miss rarely, but their best case use is if you make a stealth build. There are also throwables in the form of knives, darts and others if you feel like taking anyone down silently. I didn't bother playing stealthily, so I can't say how well it plays and how well the weapons work in that case. I was going guns blazing, but it's one more option to consider. For light weapons, you have a bunch of different pistols, revolvers, shotguns, submachine guns, a few lightweight rifles, etc. The fun starts with the heavy weapons, assault rifles, grenade launchers, RPGs, heavy machine guns, and of course, the sniper rifle, although it's a separate category. There is even a railgun. Just look at the sheer amount of options. Some are rarer than others, and that's what's making it worth searching every corner of every map. One notable thing about all weapons is their stats, of course. Damage and range are obvious, but you also have reload time, armor penetration, accuracy, sound and other factors. Sometimes you might have to sacrifice one for the other. At the end, I had one weapon that took ages to start shooting, but it was devastating. The first time I saw it in action was on my squad. It was an ugly sight. We shouldn't forget all the throwables and explosives, grenades, dynamite, Molotov cocktails, mines, C4, etc. You can use the throwables, but it takes ages to finish the animation. I don't know if it improves if you invest points in the skill, since I never did that. That's why I tried it only in the beginning with disastrous results. The same goes for the explosive. Now, when I think about it, I had one person who was good with them and I could have made my life easier on the last map by planting mines and C4 and waiting for the NPCs to walk on them. I did a similar thing very early on. There's also a lot of defensive loot, vests, gloves, shoes and helmets that boost your defense, traditional med packs or alternative medicine, food and water to restore your health. You can find all sorts of drugs that will boost your stats temporarily, but they all come with some sort of drawback, like permanently decreasing your health points. Maybe it's worth it if you're in a pinch, but at what cost? There is also so much junk that you collect, or maybe it's not all rubbish, because there is a light crafting. You can add laser pointer and silencer to weapons, cook raw meat, make alternative medicine from herbs, find water through water detectors, or a skill that allows someone to detect it. Water restores health too. You can make different types of ammo for certain weapons. There are quite a few weapons I'm showing you that I haven't even seen before, which is cool. It's up to your playstyle again. I know for a fact I missed a lot of things because I didn't commit to lockpicking, but if I did it, I had to consider getting poisoned because there are chests booby-trapped with poisonous gas. I'll need an antidote. You can see how things can snowball in a good way. While writing the script, I found that you can even make backpacks. I can spend another hour describing the options on display. There are so many here and I didn't even interact with part of the mechanics. I was too dumb to figure out the crafting. I was discarding what I perceived as junk and never tried to combine items. But in my defense, the game does a poor job of explaining it. Also, there is nothing to help guide you on what can be useful or any indications that the items can be combined. I guess the try of discovering something like this is worth considering too, but when you collect so much stuff and you have limited space on each character and limited carrying capacity, you have a choice to make what to have with you. With one exception, there is nowhere to store your items. Besides food and med packs, there is another way to restore your team's health, but it's dangerous, especially before you get your hands on better gear. When you hold the right mouse button, several options appear, including to camp. Besides passing the time faster, it also restores the squad's health. They need to rest or they will get tired. I'm not entirely sure what the repercussions are. I suspect becoming worse at combat, but I've only once seen the sign that the team needs to rest. However, this is not danger-free. At any time during the rest, you can get a random attack and you are immediately transported to the battlefield. If you win and there is still time on the clock, you keep sleeping. If you lose, I hope you have a recent save. You can also put up to 3 people to guard during sleep, but I'm not sure what this does. You can still get attacked. I'm suspecting it's to minimize the chances of happening. Initially, I never noticed that the enemies drop their weapons around you once you wake up. It's another way to get some loot for the shops. At first, I dreaded having the team rest since I wasn't well armed. Sometimes they woke up with more lost health than before, but as my equipment improved, I was hoping someone would wake me up. However, the further I got into the game, the more the frequency dropped, and I don't know why. This ties in with the day and night cycle. I already mentioned healing and passage of time, but it's also connected to the quests. Some are time sensitive in the sense that you need to do it at a certain time of the day or night. There is one around halfway through the game that requires you to wait about one in-game day, so it's time to sleep. There is another one where you have just one in-game hour to pass through a certain death. You need to assign each piece of armor and weapon. It's very simple. Just click once on what you want from your backpack and it will turn green. The good thing is that those 4 lights above each portrait will tell you if something is wrong, or receive a valuable information about each member. You get a light for gaining a level, no equipped weapon, always good, and if the team needs a rest. I saw the last one just once through my 43 hours with the game because the team was resting often. However, I can't tell you how many times I went into a battle when someone wasn't armed because I was moving the loot around the team and forgot to click on a weapon. I think you're supposed to choose a secondary weapon, but I never found how to do it, and honestly, I never found the need for one. The carrying limit made me stick to one weapon. I don't think it was worth it. Initially, you get whatever you find on dead enemies and or boxes, not only by the carrying capacity, but also by the ammo. You won't have that much, so you'll probably have more than one weapon because of limited ammunition, just not assigned. After I started using much better gear, I slowly moved away from carrying more than one in my backpack. If a weapon runs out of ammo, you see a message on the screen, so I didn't lose much by not using a secondary weapon. One neat thing I found is that if you hover over an ammo pack, it shows which weapon use it, and vice versa. That way you don't have to read the description of each. It's such a simple quality of life improvement that I find it bizarre there is no way to compare weapons. You just have to hover over each individually. It can get a bit annoying the longer the game goes. The loot has another big use besides the one I was discussing. You see, there is no currency in the game, no gold, no cash, no bottle caps. So how do you buy stuff? By trading. Each item has a certain value, so you place what you want from the trader in his field and start adding items until he or she agrees. You can see the total value in both fields and how greedy they can be. Here is where the speech skill becomes useful. The bigger the number, the easier it is to get stuff cheaper. I find the trading idea very good and very fitting. is the fall of mankind, so any kind of money is useless, so bartering is the only thing left. You are limited to your team's inventory and sometimes the items you have won't be enough to trade for a single weapon, so you have to pick and choose what to keep. If you use all systems in the game, this will be even more difficult. Speaking of space, each character's inventory is set from the beginning and you can't expand it. You can make a backpack, so I'm guessing that's the only way. However, it requires materials that are not very common, so making one for each character will be close to impossible, I guess. Either way, you'll still be limited by the carrying capacity of each teammate. This has a few downsides. The character moves slowly, can't run, and can only stand while in combat. This makes them an easy target and less accurate. You might have to drop a few items if you want to stay alive. Ravaging through the environment is not the only way to get new gear. You can loot bodies. You can get whatever weapons and ammo they have. It's one of the ways I got some fancy weapons that I didn't see in the shops, but it's made annoying. When you click on a body, only your character goes to it, even if their inventory is full. You either have to transfer the loot between teammates or you have to grab another one from the party and send him to grab the goods. I don't know why the whole squad is not looting simultaneously. You can do it, but only for stuff lying on the ground. In the second half of the game, this becomes quite annoying because there is so much to collect. At some point, you get your own storage on wheels. They run on fuel and how much you burn depends on your driver's skill. You need someone with skill to drive, or it's just a stationary object. One of the team, Francis, was the designated driver and repair guy. At the end, I maxed out his driving skill, which significantly reduced the fuel consumption. Each vehicle was moving only on fumes. They're good for moving much faster than on foot, but my god, waiting for each individual character to enter or get out one by one is annoying as hell. It takes ages, and if you don't clear the area, you're going to have a bad time because it can't be interrupted. You also need to repair them from time to time because they deteriorate. One good thing about this is that you don't need to wait for the animation to finish. Once you see the health bar up, you can move the character. Combine this with weapons that come broken and can be fixed, makes me wonder if the developer planned some sort of deterioration system, because those two feel like leftovers from earlier idea. At the end of the day, the vehicles are just glorified storage containers. What ended up happening was that I left all of them at different places with different loot and traveled between maps when I needed something. There is no other way to store stuff. Controlling one kinda sucks. It feels clunky, heavy to maneuver, glued to the ground, and the hit detection with the environment is awful. You might think you can pass through 2 trees, but I guarantee you'll bounce back. Some spawn points, when you enter a map, are impossible to use the vehicle because there are so many trees, despite the fact that you can see you should be able to pass, but they are necessary. You get used to the controls eventually. One weird quirk of this game is that when you travel inside the car to another map, it always drops everyone out for some reason and you need to re-enter each time. On some maps, it spawns the vehicle half a kilometer away. It makes no sense. What else doesn't make sense is that when you are too far away from the car, you can't even see it, even if you click on its icon. I guess this is some sort of bug or something that flew under the radar during development. You are gradually fed new toys to play with, and there is always something to be excited about. There are weapons, items, equipment, useful not junk that I've never seen, but this makes it better. If you decide to replay it, there is a lot to see. Maybe focus on a different build for your characters that lets you find those things. However, one of the things that drew me was the no hand holding. This goes for the quest and the world. The world is split into 24 maps and you gain access to them gradually. You can expect from most maps to see a settlement with an NPC doing their thing, and most of them have a line or two to say. Of course, there are many buildings and most can be entered and search for goodies. Inside they look livable, though mostly with the decaying furniture. However, the people are doing the best in the situation and continue to use the buildings. There is a day and night cycle and people go to bed every night. You can't interact with them, so you have to wait until the morning. There is a sense of livable and breathing world, but by reading what the dev wanted to do, they were way more ambitious initially. The end result is that once you pass the excitement, you start to see the NPCs has very little going on, sitting around and doing nothing, or repeat one task over and over again like Sisyphus pushing the boulder. The maps themselves are a mixed bag. Some are on the smaller side and just don't have anything interesting. After the second half of the game, there is a cave you need to go through, and it's just that, a cave with few shacks. It's mostly shooting there, but it's quite forgettable. Or the freight station, there is barely anything to do there. I think it's supposed to be a place you can refuel your car, but if that's the case, for the life of me I couldn't figure out how to do it. Besides that, there is a very simple quest there where you have to visit 3 peaks and that's it, there is nothing else. What was disappointing to me was the final map. Besides the tough skirmishes, it's a bare land, small in comparison to the previous places, and there is a building in the middle of it that you can't even enter. It was hyped throughout much of the game, but in my eyes, it failed to deliver. At least figuring out how to win there was fun, albeit a bit frustrating, but this could be my fault. Where the levels shine are with the bigger maps. If it involves taking over a fort, even better. Initial levels have 1 or 2 smaller settlements to get used to the dynamics of the world. Some offer more shooting than others. The first glimpse of what to come is with your first main quest that takes place in New Stafford. You have 2 very small settlements, a shopkeeper and a few side quests, most of which don't even involve action. One is a nod to a particular time traveling franchise. Maps like Wasteland are on the opposite side. They are boring to look at but offer some initial tough shootouts and a chance to get more XP and loot. It balances between action and non-action quite well. This goes throughout the whole game. Yes, a bit later in the game it has way more action, but there are other non-confrontational quests and I like this. The game's economy is based around this. You still have to think about whether you're going to have enough firepower for the next encounter, but you can take it easy from time to time. You still get XP and some loot. Probably the best map for me is Copper Hill. It does the closest we get to a town. I think it's the biggest map just because it takes the longest to walk from one side to the other. It has a settlement, 2 different places to take over from the enemies, a train station and its surrounding buildings, and interesting quests. It's the most absorbing visually and it was the most fun to play. Coming from a smaller map, it was a bit intimidating, but it wasn't in the end. There are other cool maps, some with weird in a good way quests, but I don't want to spoil them. There is one outlier, the arena. The whole thing is, as the name suggested, an arena in the middle of the map, think the Coliseum, and you have bare knuckle fights. It's a good way to get the experience and maybe some rewards, but after the first enemy mopped the floor with me, I reloaded my save file and left. I didn't invest any points in close combat, so there is no point, pun intended, to be here. Once you enter the arena, you are stripped of everything, so you can't cheat. While there is nothing special visually, it's a fitting level to include in a post-apocalyptic game, but if you don't know it's coming and or don't have any points put in close combat skill, the map is kind of useless, and you can't grind to get some XP. Enemies don't respawn. This is why I spent 10-15 minutes on the map and never looked back. One of the coolest things about the levels is that most have different entry points. Depending on where you come from, you enter from a different part of the map and you can see the roads to all of them. Again, it wasn't necessary, but it's cool nonetheless. Details like this makes me like the game even more. There is a weird obsession of being as detailed as possible, more specifically when you click on something. The whole world is interactable in the sense that the main character always has something to say if you click on an object to search for goodies. You spend so much time clicking on boxes, barrels, cabinets, lockers, chests, etc. and the protagonist comments on everything. The lines get very quickly very repetitive, but you can stop it by pressing escape. There is even a comment for a tree stump. For what? I have no idea. I guess it's to make the world feel more believable, but a tree stump? There is no escaping this because you have to search every nook and cranny for loot. There is a way around this. Throughout this video I showed a website someone made dedicated to the game. It includes detailed descriptions for every item, map and other elements of the game. This is how I know I've never seen some weapons and never visited some maps. Kudos whoever mapped the whole game. You can use it to see where the loot is. It kinda sucks the joy of discovery, but it gets annoying to click on everything. It can also help with crafting. Do what feels right for you. I did use it a couple of times because the game doesn't hold your hand and it took me a while to rewire my brain. The story and quests have a weird dynamic. The overarching plot is nothing to write home about. The initial quest is to find your father and sister, but quickly after you start playing the game, you are told that your dad is dead and your sister is kidnapped by the Rat Skull gang. You probably start the main quest by visiting your father's grave and promising to avenge his death and save your younger sister. At some point, the story shifts towards a grander themes, but everything is a cliché. Twists and turns are so predictable. I was hearing the main villain talking to you in a friendly manner, and all I could think of was, you do sound like a bad guy. I'm pretty sure you are behind a lot of what's going on. And surprise surprise, I was spot on. There are also character decisions that baffled me, such as how quickly some NPCs accept what's going on. Oh well, c'est la vie attitude. And I was, huh? Really? It won't wow anyone, but it's not offensively bad, just predictable. On the other hand, the side quests are way more interesting than the main plot. They offer some genuinely fun stuff to do and see. You can technically boil them down to fetch quests or kill someone, but the context is important, the reason behind it. Help a newspaper journalist by finding 5 stories for him, catch a wild Mustang, protect a settlement from raiders, enter a museum by testing your knowledge, free prisoners from enemy camp, try to make amends between two brothers, and many more. They like to go in an interesting direction after the initial setup. Some of them make you feel like you are helping to restore society, even if it's on a smaller scale, and I never lost interest. What made the quest interesting is that quite a few of them can be solved in more than one way, and you often get basic directions where to go, so you have to follow your compass, which is above the minimap. Nothing is spelled out for you, and I love it. It did cause me occasional confusion, but that's entirely on me. Quite often, you just need to search around the map and you'll find the solution. One of the funniest side quests was about a guy who likes a girl, but she refuses to give him a chance. Your job is to arrange a date, but there is a lot of work to be done. Jim Bob is a mechanic working in a junkyard, hasn't taken a shower in years, wears the same clothes without washing them, and hasn't had a haircut in ages. And he doesn't see anything wrong with this. For the most part, everything is obtainable easily, but the clothes are not. You need to get another NPC's leather jacket, but he doesn't want to give it up just like that. To this problem, there are three solutions. You pass a speed check, you get a piece of metal and jam it into his threshing machine to break it, that way you can call Jim Bob to fix it. That's how you get the jacket. Or the third option, just shoot him and loot the body. There are no consequences for that. And again, nothing is told to you directly. You are not completely left blind. Sometimes your character will say one of the solutions, but that's it. This is not the only quest like this, even some of the main ones have more than one solution. In this day and age, this is not mind-blowing, but it's cool. I would never expect something like this in a game from 2004 that barely anyone heard of. The combination of interesting characters, moment-to-moment gameplay, and quests kept me going. All this incentivizes exploring every inch of the map, and at the end you get rewarded with loot, XP, or experiencing something new. That's why I could safely say there is some replayability, and the way I played it might differ from yours. This is what I meant earlier by missing part of the game. If I hadn't made my choices a certain way, I wouldn't have the same experience, and that's pretty cool to say the least. To be honest, I saw most of the game has to offer, except for a few quests which I decided to cancel or not finish for various reasons. That's why it took me 37 hours. That's from the in-game timer shown at the save file. The actual recordings are 43 hours. The sound design is pretty solid. Guns are appropriately punchy.
Alarm! Zu den Waffen! Schnell!
That one weapon I gave my character at the end is a beast. Explosions are not overly bombastic, but they are doing the job. There isn't much sound out in the Wastelands, besides a crow here and there. This is where the music is doing the heavy lifting. It's never in the foreground and it never takes center stage, but it's great complement to the gameplay and atmosphere. Most of the music sounds tribalistic, drums, percussions, etc., with Middle Eastern notes and a dose of tension. Actually, the whole soundtrack has a desert feel. The biggest outlier is the main theme you hear on the menu screen called The Fall, performed by the German gothic metal band Darkseid. For obvious reasons, I can't play it, but it's on YouTube. It's also heavily used in the game's trailers. It's so distant from the other tracks that it fits so well. At the end of the day, it's commissioned by the studio and the band delivered. The other track I really enjoy plays during the world map. Here is the thing about the soundtrack. Most of the music you probably never hear it in-game fully. They quite often play during certain activities like opening the world map, where you quickly choose where to go and the song changes. It's a good soundtrack that adds a tone to the false desert world atmosphere, but it's not something I would listen outside the game. One last thing about the sound design. There is voice acting, but only in German and only in the reload version.
Hey Dad, ich hoffe dir geht's gut, da wo du jetzt bist. Wobei beschissener als uns hier kannst du ja wohl kaum gehen. Ich bin eigentlich nur kurz vorbeigekommen, um dir zu sagen, dass ich Mom ordentlich begraben habe. Ich habe sogar sowas wie einen Gedenkstein auf ihr Grab gelegt. Nichts Besonderes. Ich hatte ja kein vernünftiges Werkzeug mehr im Dorf, um die Schrift ordentlich einzumeißeln. Naja.
To me, it sounds good, but I can't really judge if the performance is solid. I don't speak German at all. If any Germans are watching the video, let me know how it is for you. I'm interested to know. time for some spoilers. If you wanna skip this part, click on the time on the screen for the conclusion. Also, I'm going to start with the intro scene, which is about 4 minutes long. If you don't wanna watch it, here is the timestamp, but I'll refer to it at one point. In the grand scheme of things, it's not required to watch it, it's just a setup for the story. Also, I'll go over the major story beats, because if I have to discuss everything, the video will be 6 hours long. With this out of the way, let's start traversing the scorched lands of the fall.
Mutter, draußen donnert es.
Die Stürme können uns hier drin nichts anhaben. Hab keine Angst.
Ich habe keine Angst.
Ich weiß, du hast Mut, mein Engel.
Was genau ist Mut?
Das ist eine gute Frage. Menschen, die sich für andere in Gefahr begeben, haben Mut. Aber auch die Wahrheit zu sagen, kann mutig sein.
Sind alle Menschen so mutig wie ich?
Nicht alle, aber einige schon. Unser Anführer zum Beispiel.
Warum ist er so mutig?
Ich weiß nicht. Manchmal muss man einfach Dinge tun, die man eigentlich gar nicht will oder vor denen man Angst hat, weißt du? Wir verdanken unserem Anführer sehr viel, das darfst du nie vergessen. Er war bereit, sein Leben für uns zu opfern.
Mutter,
Ja?
erzähl mir von unserem Anführer.
Die Geschichte ist schon lange her. Unser Anführer war damals nur ein einfacher Wanderer. Eine der Banden aus den Wastelands hatte sein Dorf überfallen und alle Bewohner getötet. Auch seine Mutter.
Unser Anführer hat keine Mutter mehr?
Nein, hat er nicht. Und damals wusste er auch nicht, wo sein Vater und seine Schwester sind. Er dachte, sie wären vor der Bande geflohen und würden irgendwo umherirren.
Dann war er ganz alleine?
Ja, er war ganz alleine. Und darum suchte er auch nach Menschen, die ihm helfen würden, seinen Vater und seine Schwester zu finden. Eines Tages hörte er dann von Leuten, die sich die Regierung der neuen Ordnung nannten. Sie suchten Kämpfer, um sich gegen die Banden zu wehren.
Ich kenne die Männer von der Regierung. Die laufen immer auf den Wegen rum und passen auf.
Das war damals eine andere Regierung, mein Engel. Früher war alles viel gefährlicher. Deshalb wollte die Regierung das Leben der Menschen auch sicherer machen und gegen die Banden kämpfen. Und unser Anführer wollte sich ihnen anschließen. Er wollte die Bande finden, die sein Dorf zerstört hatte, und sich rächen.
Und nach seinem Vater und seiner Schwester suchen.
Ganz genau. Er wusste, dass er einen langen und gefährlichen Weg vor sich hatte. Aber unser Anführer hatte keine Angst, denn er war schon damals sehr stark und mutig. Er lief lange und er hatte Hunger und Durst und die Sonne verbrannte ihm das Gesicht. Aber irgendwann hat jede auch noch so schwere Reise ein Ende. Und so stand er eines Morgens vor den Toren der Regierung der neuen Ordnung.
Once you are dropped into the game, you are just outside the new government settlement. A guard stops you and asks where you're going. You tell him you want to be a mercenary, so he directs you to the president. Also, there is an execution taking place in the center of a gang member, and we just barely missed it. A lot of people are around for the entertainment. There is even an announcer. You can talk to everyone to get the feeling for the place, but the most important person, the president, is slightly off to the side of the guillotine. Important NPCs are marked with small white triangles. President Hayes says the guy did some very heinous crimes, to put it lightly, so he deserted. The headless guy was a member of a local gang, the Desert Monks. TLDR, You want to be a mercenary, and the president says you need to visit Lucas on the east side of the camp so he can give you a pass. After that, you need to meet with him again. I find Lucas and he poses an interesting question. Will you fill your pass on your own or he will do it? In other words, you spread the points in your stat screen or they will be randomly assigned. That's pretty cool. I filled everything myself, and as soon as I go out, Hayes intercepts me in a glorious in-engine cutscene. Is it just me, or does the uniform he's wearing reminds me of something from the past century? This is just an exposition dump to familiarize yourself with the new government, their work, Hayes, mercenaries, and all the good information to build a mythos around the game world. The president directs you to meet Wesley on the north side of the camp and to expect to start soon. And lastly, he says that you need to remember you represent the new government and use it. People will respect that. I often mention in the conversation if there was an option, and people do so often once they hear it. I go straight to Wesley, and it turns out they know each other. They lived in the same village, and B thought he had died during the attack. He barely escaped. On the question what happened to B's father and sister, Wesley drops devastating news. He doesn't know what happened to Annie, but he had to drag your father out as he wanted to go with nothing but his bare hands after the Rat Skull gang that attacked the village. Eventually your father bled to death in Wesley's arms. He couldn't leave him to the vultures and buried him just outside the camp. After that, you can fire up some questions towards Wesley. The president gave him medical treatment, and soon he rose in the ranks and became in charge of all the mercenaries. And your first task is to assemble a team and take out the Rat Skulls, but Wesley thinks you are not up to leading a bunch of people and dealing with the gang. The Rat Skulls are responsible for the attack on the village, and their leader Phoenix is personally accountable for your father's death. You bring up emotions and make mistakes when you are up against him. Wesley says he'll speak with the president to avoid involving you, but you firmly stand your ground. After a bit of back and forth, realizing you are as stubborn as your father, he reluctantly agrees to prepare you for the upcoming challenge. He feeds you information about the gang, and it's everything you can imagine. Wesley also has a plan for dealing with them. First, you need to contact David, who recently quit the Rat Skulls and is now laying low. He knows many of the members and might know their weakness. B says he'll try to find out where they are getting all the recruits and deal with the gang. However, Wesley says he understands his desire for revenge fully because they are no bigger friends than him and his father, but he advises you, since you represent the new government, it's good to help people around. They will look up to you, otherwise you'll betray everything Wesley and Hayes fight for. Order in this disorganized world. You need to learn to help people. Wesley's and the president's pep talk is the in-game way to tell you to do the side quests. It's an immersive way to do it. It's time to choose a team. Wesley gives you all their passes, and my advice is to mix the skills, but most importantly, if you want a slightly easier early game, you need someone with high speech so you can better prices from the traders. The second skill is driving. It's good to use the cars to move around and not only for storage boxes. For the latter, I chose Francis, who has not only have high driving skill but also technical skill. It allows him to repair weapons and vehicles. Initially, this was a blessing. I got so many broken weapons. I think you can still use them, but they are less effective. I never had to do it because Francis was the man. Once the team is chosen, you thank Wesley for the help and get going with chasing the Rat Skulls. However, if you want to be better prepared, there is a training site that covers the basics. I suggest going over it, since it can be slightly overwhelming the first time you go into combat. The first quest I did was visit the grave of B's father. Once you're near it, you see 3 people standing there. I was prepared for battle, but I guess they were not. As soon as B shouted at them, they just run away. There is no significance to this cutscene, so I have no idea why it's included. B kneels by the grave and begins talking to his father. It seems B thinks Annie is gone too, and he is all alone. He vows revenge and leaves to find David and question him. The team travels to a new area called New Stafford. As soon as all of them get close to what B thinks is David's place, the house nearby explodes. On a closer inspection, we see 3 gang members cornering David, so we must rescue him. The Rat Skulls threaten him with paying a visit to his daughter. They are really disappointed that he left. They are giving him a chance to pray before blowing his brains out. This is our chance to strike. The team dispatches them with ease, and now it's time to chat with David. He asks for help protecting his daughter, but B is keen to get some answers first. The Rat Skulls often change location, so they don't have a base. They have 100 people ready for action, plus 300 supporters on standby. Since they have the biggest water source, they like to spike the water with a new drug called Z and distribute it. Once people are hooked, they don't have a choice but to join. This is how they get their new recruits. This was a drug developed during the 1950s. It makes you indifferent to everything, including pain, without melting your brain. They have a secret lab somewhere where they hired scientists to make it, but he will reveal its location after we save his daughter. We need to go to New Stafford where she lives. The Rat Skulls are preparing an attack there. David says you need to be well armed to attack the lab, so you need to visit their arms depot. You need to speak with Ben, the village leader, who is taking care of her, but he doesn't wish to mention his name. They had a few problems in the past. The team goes to the village, and the first thing I notice is a hangman. This will come into play a bit later. We find Ben and inform him that the rat skulls will attack. The village doesn't even have many weapons, so Ben will take everyone and leave the place while we prepare for defense. Also, the villagers hang the man on the tree, a rat skull member, because they caught him trying to blow up the place. B has an idea. Gather some rats around the tree, plant an explosive and take them out. You go to J, who has C4, and after a bit of convincing he agrees and gives it. The first time I didn't do it. Instead I went exploring the surroundings. It wasn't until a cutscene triggered while I was far away that I realized the whole quest is in real time. You can actually see the rat skulls coming slowly to the village, so I loaded my save file just after getting the explosive. Also, unless you have someone who can work with bombs, you can't set the trap. You have to do it the old-fashioned way. Guns blazing. I planted the C4 and moved the team to a nearby shack. They all gathered around, unhappy to see their friend there, and I pressed the button.
Das ist doch Butcher. Diese Vogelscheuchen haben ihn aufgeknüpft.
Kein Wunder, dass er nicht ins Camp zurückgekommen ist.
Was soll's? Ich konnte mit dem Kerl ohnehin nichts anfangen.
Er war ein Idiot, aber trotzdem einer von uns. Dafür werden diese kleinen Maden extra langsam sterben.
Wie wär's mit sowas wie einer Schweigeminute für den alten Butcher?
Sag mal, bist du vollkommen verblödet? Hör auf, hier dumm rumzuquatschen, sonst knüpfe ich dich neben diesem Idioten auf.
War ja nur ein Vorschlag.
Wir treiben jetzt erstmal diese Dörfler zusammen. Wenn ich heute keinen mehr umlege, bekomme ich schlechte Laune. Außerdem haben unsere Jungs an den Ausgängen sicherlich keine Lust zu warten, bis du dich ausgeschwiegen hast. Komm jetzt!
Was war das denn?
Ach, du kennst doch Raphael. Ihm reicht sich einfach ein paar Leute abzuknallen. Bei ihm muss immer gleich alles in die Luft fliegen.
Da hast du recht, typisch Rafa.
The others think that someone from their group wants to blow up the village, so they didn't pay much attention to the explosion. The trap helped a lot because I had 4 fewer people to shoot. Once I got rid of the last gang member, all the villagers came back. Ben is grateful and the question is, where is David's daughter Sarah? He says she disappeared and they are looking for her. B suspects that the Ratskulls kidnapped her, so he promises to find her. Finding Sarah took me way longer than I like to admit. I just didn't explore the map thoroughly. I missed one corner. However, in the meantime, I did all of the side quests available, plus I visited another map, Wasteland, Seeker's Village, which doesn't have any connection to the main story, but I got some loot, XP and introduction to another gang, the Desert Moons, who took over this settlement. You can find them on a different map where they have 2 camps you need to destroy. This is a side quest on which I spent more than an hour trying to finish. The reason was that I wasn't well equipped at this stage of the game and I just got obliterated over and over again. I gave up and returned a couple of hours later, completely steamrolling them. Eventually I traveled back to New Stafford because I was sure I was missing something to continue the main quest. While searching this area, I stumbled upon Tiberius with a strange looking car. He explains, by shouting it, that this is the Space-Time Continuum Defragmentation Operator, or STCDO. It's a time machine. He wants to travel back in time to stop the catastrophe. However, it's missing a vital component, the Plix compensator. Rings a bell? This is a clear nod to Back to the Future. In the movie, the part is called Flux Capacitor, and there is a character named Marty dressed in familiar clothes. He has the compensator.
Du hast den Fluxkompensator tatsächlich gefunden? Spitze, ey!
Ja, irgendwie habe ich das wohl. Was machst du jetzt mit dem Ding?
Das wirst du gleich sehen. Tritt zurück, ich habe eine Mission zu erfüllen, ey. Ach so, bevor ich es vergesse, du kannst meinen ganzen Krempel hier haben. Ich brauche das Zeug nicht mehr. Und nun, wünsch mir Glück.
Wow, der Wagen ist in die Luft geflogen. Oh Mann, da will man mal jemandem was Gutes tun und besorgt ihm so ein Fluxding und der jagt sich damit in die Luft. Naja, nicht zu ändern.
I think this is enough talk about the side quests. They are interesting, but I'll let you see them for yourself. Now, let's save Sarah. I realized at some point that I had completely missed a section of the map, so I headed there and saw some Rat Skull members preparing to do something to Sarah. But she is a fighter and not afraid of them. They are outnumbered and dealt swiftly. B makes sure Sarah is okay, and thankfully she is not harmed in any way. He asks whether she managed to learn the Rat Skull's plans. She recalls that one of the guys was reading a note about a depot. I found the note, but I read it later while I was on my way to the weapon stash. The team goes back to David to deliver the good news. After that, he reveals the location of the drug lab and that you have tough time getting in. You have a choice on which to attack first, the lab or the arms depot. Although, your character spells for you where to go first. This is very unnecessary. You can say this is the equivalent of the yellow pen. You've been told that getting inside the fortified lab unprepared is all but impossible, and logically it does make sense to arm yourself to the teeth before going on the offensive. You can still try to take over the lab, nothing is stopping you, but that's besides the point. Anyway, I decided to travel to Bowie village where the depot is located at the map's outskirts. Of course, I did finish all the side quests in this area, some were quite interesting. One involves a day-night cycle. You need to hunt for a tiger at the edge of the map, but it only appears around midnight. The other that stands out was a guy treating his wife badly, to put it lightly. I reenacted the scene from Robocop with Murphy just before OCP got their hands on him. The main quest leads us to a farmer, a discounted Charles Bronson named Pete, who likes to spit a lot, after each sentence.
Danke für den Hinweis. Was soll denn hier so gefährlich sein?
Was hier so gefährlich ist? Typen wie du überleben in dieser Gegend nicht lange. Am besten du läufst einfach weiter Richtung Minen.
B starts a conversation with him and Pete warns him that the road ahead is littered with landmines planted by the Ratskulls. He doesn't like them at all because out of nowhere they came and stole his tractor just because they could. But B has an idea, a brilliant idea. Pete has cows, and after careful deliberation he agrees to send his cows into the landmine field to disarm them, by stepping on them. He wants his tractor more, he hurts them and will stand on a hill and watch the fireworks. A few gang members came to see what happened, but they ended up back in their position. Fun fact, you can gather meat from the cows even if they are in bits and pieces. Given its importance, only 5 people were protecting the depot. I quickly took over, but to get to the goods, you need to blow up a door to a bunker where everything is stored and a few people are inside. Pete comes to thank you for returning his tractor, but B mentions the door, so Pete suggests visiting someone named Donald who likes to blow things up. Donald is a creepy guy. He stands in front of a mine southwest of the settlement. Is that Uwe Boll? Just the way he talks gives me the creeps.
Na, da hast du aber Glück. Du stehst vor Donald, dem einzigen Mann mit Sprengstoff hier in der Gegend.
So slimy and sleazy. He is a real estate agent after all, and the house behind him are the apartments. Excuse me, those are comfortable alternate living quarters in the most exclusive residential area. The guy mentioned he has 3 kids to feed, and you can see where this is going. But at one point he changed them to 4 and B doesn't call him out. He wants the best for his kids, which means we need to hunt a bison and a tiger. Bison is the easy target, but a tiger? We don't know where to look for one. However, the local hunter Waldemar can give us direction, but he wants a gallon of water. Throughout the game you can find and use water skins to drink water and store health. He wants 6 water skins. The quest is quite annoying and potentially game breaking. If I were to use all the water, I have no idea how you'd find out more. I tried to shoot Donald, but the game won't let me. Luckily, the trader nearby had some water skins. There is one way, but I wonder whether it's intentional. You see, if you know where to go and or the conditions for a quest, you can finish it anyway. I did 2 like that. It feels like unintentional non-linearity because you don't have the necessary info to do it, but it can happen. I had one quest that I simultaneously finished and did not finish in the quest log because I skipped a step. I guess that's one thing that can be used in the speedrun. I have to check for myself. Anyway, a couple of months ago, Waldemar shot a little tiger and he is pretty sure the mother roams around the hills over the west looking for revenge. I camped outside and got attacked during the rest. The reason I'm mentioning it is that this is the first time I realized that enemy belongings are dropped on the ground and you can collect them. I noticed a strange pixel on the dirt. From this moment on, I often held 9 because this was the button that showed everything in the nearby area you can pick up. I started heading towards the hill, but on my way there I saw the first vehicle. The team gets inside and the controls are not great, but it's not the end of the world. Also, unless you are at top speed, you can't climb the smallest elevation. I climbed the hill and B says this must be the place and I set up a camp until midnight. The tiger popped up in existence out of nowhere. I quickly make him lay down to sleep, get the meat, head to the nearby place where the bisons are, get the meat and head back to Donald, who now says his 6 kids will have something to eat. This time B calls him out. After I got the explosive, I head back to the bunker. This one took me some time to figure out, but all I had to do is right click and choose the hand icon. You need to place it as close to the door as the game allows it. I didn't use much explosive or even grenades, so I wasn't sure what to do. You need someone with basic knowledge to plant it, otherwise you'll miss out on some sweet equipment. Removing the entrance forces everyone to surrender, giving you a choice to spare them or not. I decided to let them go. I collect everything inside, but there is a locked chest that required a locksmith. There is one back in the settlement and it's a quest, but I never did it. I decided to move on. Once I was locked and loaded, the gang moved to Casa Verde where the Rat Skull lab is. Entering is not a straightforward affair. there are quite a few steps before that. When you approach the lab, the guard asks for a password. You can make few excuses, but the end result is you getting shot at. You can't just start shooting because there is a school bus blocking the entrance and it's moved only when you know the password. Also, just outside the entrance, there is a giant turret that might be active. Even if it's not, it's still intimidating. So how do we get the password? Just outside the fortress, there is a woman with a particular set of skills standing there. Lovely Layla. Every morning, the people who distribute the drug stop there to use her services. Both of them. At the same time. After a short chat and a bit of persuasion, she agrees to tell what she knows, albeit not much. Early mornings, the runners stop for 1-2 hours, and this is your chance to learn the password. Once you enter Casa Verde, you need to speak with Jim Bob. He owns a junkyard and likes to fix things. You start chatting with him, and Jim will say he managed to fix an old CIA listening bug. He's willing to give it to you if you manage to arrange a date with his crush, Dana. He was hitting on her, but she said to him she would rather sit naked in a cactus field than go out with him. Why is that, you may ask? Well, he hasn't had a shower in years, his clothes haven't been washed, and his hair looked terrible. Jim doesn't see anything wrong with this, but B convinces him that these are the steps he needs to take if he wants to stand a chance with Dana. This is probably the most interesting quest for me because it's just silly. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the haircut and soap are easy to arrange. It becomes quite interesting with the new clothes, a jacket. I've already talked about this earlier in the video, but the gist of it is that you need to go east where the guy with the treasure is. He has the jacket. You either have to convince him to give it to you, speed check, jam a piece of metal in the treasure so you can call Jim Bob to fix it, and in return he'll get the jacket, or just shoot him and steal it. I did the latter. Once you collect everything, you can turn Jim into a new man. The mission ends in resounding success. However, Jim tries to play smart, but it won't work here. He gives the bug, but you also need a walkie-talkie, which wasn't part of the deal. B threatens him to put his old clothes under Dana's nose, essentially making him look bad. Jim caves and gives the walkie-talkie. I go back to lovely Layla and wait for the mules to come back. Once they do go inside to do their business, you need to plant the bug in their truck. Then sit and wait. The NPCs go back to the vehicle and drive straight to the lab entrance. The password is Rosebud. Once inside, I started exploring the building for loot, but in one of them there is 2 enemies, so I decided to shoot them. However, this triggered half of the NPCs and they stormed my location. I was trying to test how many of them the gunshots will attract. Apparently, it's possible to deal with them stealthily, which gains a lot of XP, but no one from the team had the necessary skills to pull it off. This attraction worked in my favor. They just line up ready for an execution. Slowly and methodically, the area is cleared, and at the very back, all the scientists are held captive and forced to work on Z. One of them is very chatty. He says that in a nearby location, all families are held hostage to ensure cooperation. Once Z is made, it's sent to the Rat Skull headquarters. Nearby, there is a spring that is contaminated by the drug, ensuring they will have constant flow of loyal soldiers. Besides being highly addictive, it also enhances the user's fighting ability, whatever that means. The HQ is probably full of users, so it's likely very dangerous there. The scientists want their families to be free before telling where the headquarters is. This is very understandable, so B doesn't hesitate. The camp where the hostages are is southwest from lovely Layla. Few people are guarding them and they pose no threat. Once everyone is free, the scientist says the gang can find the Rat Skull's HQ at Spirit Spring. Immediately after our arrival, B is surprised to see Wesley there. He heard there is going to be a big showdown with the rats and he's willing to fight with us, albeit indirectly. He has information for us. Southwest of our location, there is a Humvee armed and intact. He guesses that the rats hid it there and we can use it to help ourselves. B is grateful, of course. Wesley also says he needs to go to fight his own battles. We shouldn't hesitate and blow Phoenix's brains out at the first chance we have. It's outside of a cave nearby, and just as the squad is about to enter the vehicle, rats come out from the inside of the cave and headed to the car. But this was a setup. 2 guys enter it and the Humvee blows up, taking out all of them in the process. If we had been 2 minutes earlier, the whole squad would have perished. We as players know it, but B has to conclude that the situation is very fishy. It's time to take down Phoenix and the Rat Skulls. Initially, I tried to enter through the side, but the bus was blocking the entrance, so the main entrance it is. The whole section is probably the most fun shootout so far. Big open space, many enemies to face, and buildings to search and take cover. Story-wise, we are making a big progress by confronting some hard truths. Once I got to the middle of the HQ, Phoenix shows up and just stand there and wait for you to talk. I decide to completely annihilate what's left of the rats before I have a stern talk with him. All the enemies stand around like they don't hear the shooting, so I just started blasting. There is a weird body on the ground. B comments that the person, or a mutant, is huge and he has a grey skin. This will come up later. Phoenix says he respects us because we managed to kill all of his men. B asks if he remembers Sandhaven. Phoenix starts to laugh and understand what this is all about. Revenge, and calls it a dump. The rats had fun there, but someone opened the doors for them and dropped his name.
Jemand hat uns die Tür geöffnet, wenn du verstehst, was ich meine. Du solltest ihn ja kennen, wenn du daherkommst. Er hieß Wesley.
He distracted the guard and the rats took over the village with ease. What Phoenix says next makes B realize that recent events might not be an accident. He insinuates that Wesley probably sent him to take care of him so he can keep his secret, and he wouldn't be surprised if he hadn't already tried to kill us. Phoenix can recall B's sister. You are given an option to let him go or end him. I choose the latter.
Es interessiert mich nicht, was du sagst, Phoenix. Genug geredet. Zeit zu sterben, du verdammter Hurensohn. Was ist das bitte? Wesley ein Verräter? Sollte das wahr sein? Ich muss ihn zur Rede stellen.
A bitter victory. The rats are no more, but you are still not getting close to finding out what happened to your sister. And Wesley is a traitor. Time to have a word with him. The team goes to the new government HQ and finds Wesley where we first met him. B sends Phoenix regards, but he tries to deny everything at first until we threaten him and he cracks immediately. The rascals promise they won't harm anyone. They just wanted weapons. He even wanted to share his cut with your father, but your father would never wanted anything to do with this. Wesley dropped a bombshell. He mercifully killed your dad because he would have died from his gunshot wounds. Pete doesn't believe it. He probably killed him to keep him quiet. The only good thing that comes out from his mouth is a lead on Annie. He found her in Shadow's territory. Remember the cops with the grey skin? He's a Shadow. Wesley tried to bring her here, but the Shadows attacked the group Wesley was traveling with, and he was the only one who escaped alive. Annie must be held by the Shadows because they often take hostages. The president can confirm it. Wesley says he wants to help bring your sister back, which makes B angrier. After all this, the traitor is responsible for all the people he buried. Wesley even starts to cry, trying to have your mercy. Again, you are presented with a choice. Let him go or finish him. After a few seconds of thinking, I decide to let him go. Suffering in the Wastelands with no food or water is much more satisfying than a bullet to the head.
Sei still, du Dreckschwein. Ich habe genug von deinem sinnlosen Gequatsche. Hör jetzt genau zu. Du wirst den Südwesten verlassen. Noch heute. Sollte ich dich je wieder treffen, wirst du sterben.
Danke, mein Junge. Ich mach mich sofort auf den Weg. Und ich wünsche dir nur das Beste. Du wirst sehen, du findest Amy und...
Geh, Wesley. Jetzt.
He has intercepted us on our way out. He is happy that the rats are gone, but letting Wesley not so much. He heard everything that happened. However, all this is in the past. He needs our help to deal with the Shadows. They attack only GNO people and take them hostage. The reason is still unknown. When GNO tries to capture one of them, they take their own lives. Shadows are mutated humans, tall, strong and fast compared to a normal human and resistant to most diseases. It's not known how they came to be, but they declare war on humans. President Hayes considers them enemy number one. B hopes his next mission will involve the Shadows. Maybe he will find Annie with them. Hayes has them in mind for your next task. He says you are free to kill as many as you want of them. You need to travel northwest and talk to the nomads. They reported that the Shadows take hostages to various camps in armed convoys, and they are the only ones who know when these take place. The plan is to ambush one of the convoys, and either the guards or the prisoners can probably tell why the Shadows are acting like one. The president likes how motivated you are, says you have a bright future in the new government, and wants you to report back when you find out why the Shadows attacked the GNO. The place you need to visit is Copper Hill, but first you need to go through a labyrinth. It's fun, short and action-packed map. Once you arrive at Copper Hill, you are greeted with Caleb, a member of the Nomads. He agrees to take you to their leader Joshua, but just as B starts talking, he is interrupted. Joshua says they help only friends, and since we are not, we have to prove ourselves. There are wild horses nearby. Bring one of them and they will share all the information they have. He gives you a hint in the form of a riddle, and your character will spell it for you. If you pass the speed check, you can quickly continue your task. I knew I wouldn't, so I agreed. Also, I would miss on the horse quest. What I have to do is get an apple, inject it with a tranquilizer, give it to the horse and bring it back to the nomads camp. The quest took me a while because I didn't fully explore the map. You see, an apple is easy to find, but a tranquilizer is not. I was looking all over the other maps for it, but the answer is southwest of the nomad camp. Their shaman, Aiden, can't perform his duties because he is plagued by spirits. We ask him to stir some herbs to make a tranquilizer, but he has a better solution. Valium. He stocked up on it. He wants a syringe to put it inside. Luckily, I had one. Not that far away from the shaman, you'll find the wild horses. Inject the Valium in the apple, put it somewhere down near them, and one of the horses will eat it. This will make it follow you. Joshua is grateful and agrees to answer all your questions. He doesn't know why the Shadows are kidnapping people. They use convoys to transport them. The camp consists of two places, the weapon depot south of the Nomads and Copper Hill village. Both are protected by many people. What you need to do to stop them here is to take out the general who was left to control the area and constantly travels with the prisoners convoy. For the exact position, you need to speak with Bill, who is one of the trackers. Bill is blind but not deaf. He says at what time they pass and points out their base. I went there, and as soon as I saw the convoy coming, I immediately intercepted them. This is the first battle against the Shadows, and they were underwhelming. They were hyped as this tough opponent, but I easily took care of a bunch of them. However, what seems to be the general is in fact his double. He caught a stray bullet and he's fighting for his life. He started saying he was betrayed and he was supposed to be safe. They knew the general was in danger, so he was chosen to be his double. They all knew about the attack, traitors everywhere. This explains why there were only soldiers and no captives in the convoy. Someone from the Nomads spilled the beans. I cleared up the base and went straight back to Joshua. Initially, he refuses to believe someone from his people would do this, but Caleb, the guy who brought us here, disappeared shortly after he knew what we were about to do. Joshua has no idea where he could be, but you should speak with his wife Fatima, who he doubts would even tell you even if she knew. At first, she does exactly that. I tried a speech check, but to no one's surprise, it failed. With no other option, I threatened her son and she cracked. Fatima worried about him a lot. He has a cave that he's going from time to time, so maybe he's there. She doesn't know the exact location, gives you his jacket and tells you to use the dogs of the blind tracker Arik. I immediately went to him. He asked for meat and water in return for his services, but I saw the jacket is missing. No one had it from the team. It wasn't on the ground. I reloaded the safe and the result was the same. I think the quest just broke. This didn't stop me. I used that website with the maps and all the details. He was in the upper right corner under the X. This is one case where you shouldn't feel guilty about using the website. Galen jumps out of the cave and tries to justify himself by saying the Shadows are not just brainless monsters and he gave the information about the attack to protect the Nomads. B doesn't believe him. Caleb says the general has been hiding in Copper Hill since he learned about us. Beer is worried about the tough defense, but Caleb got some good news. A large number of soldiers are pulled to a different location to defend it against the new government's attack. The game gives you a choice to spare his life or not. I did spare him, but he essentially exiled himself and his family, so they left the Nomads. Unfortunately, he also never saw Annie. The team heads to Copper Hill and the entrance is filled with mines, so you need to move carefully because the AI is not the greatest. I managed to blow up one of my guys. While Caleb says the defense is weakened, there are still a lot of Shadows around. The general and the soldiers were a tough fight because there are a lot of line of sight obstructions, so you need to move them around and better position your team. This is where I experienced my only game crash, so I had to repeat the attack on the general. I also didn't realize it, but if I started recording before I was in-game, the recordings became darker. Because of the crash, the footage looks like this for the next hour or so. So if you see some uneven footage, it's because of that. Anyway, with his dying breath, he mocks you that you don't know anything, and if you think you won, you are dead wrong. The Shadows plan to attack Vessel Town and no one will be spared, even the prisoners. We must hurry because Annie could be there. You need to search the general's body because he has secret documents with the location of Vessel Town. Vessel Town used to be a harbor, but the sea dried up, so all the vessels are at the bottom now. There is a chance Annie could be there, but there is no easy way down and it's full of shadows. Initially, it seems almost deserted. There are only 3 people. A woman waiting for her husband, a crane operator, and museum curator. First, you need to talk to Andrew, the crane operator, to drop you down. He refuses to help you because he is afraid of getting into trouble. He says that the Shadows came one night and killed everyone. Luckily, he is the only one who can operate the crane, so they left him alive. However, he is willing to help you if you do something for him. He wants the access code to the Museum of Body Art. It's a dead body exhibition, real ones, but the curator there is more interested in the bodies than his wife. You can talk to her right after you arrive at Vessel Town. B agrees and heads up straight to the museum. Rupert, the curator, won't give you the code just like that. He has fondness for educated people, so he will quiz you about the museum. You can brute force the answers because you have unlimited tries, but to make your life easier, go to the back of the building. You'll find some magazines with the museum's history. Inside are all the answers you need. Once you get all of them right, he says he wanted to retire for a very long time and is happy to leave the building in your hands since you showed knowledge. You can leave now, but if you want, you can click on all the exhibition items and Rupert will give you a brief history of each. I backtracked to the crane operator and gave him the code, but he says while we are gone, a gang of teens messed up the crane and he can't do anything to help us and wants to hide. B stops him and tells him to stay where he is, so he can bring us up and down when needed. Andrew says the gang busted the carburetor, but if you search around, you'll find one. One of the team members goes up to fix the issue and we're good to go. This is where I found the fights difficult. There are so many enemies and I almost run out of resources. You are immediately attacked after being dropped down. At the end, I managed to deal with most of the enemies without much trouble, until I got close to the prisoners. I saw only the enemies next to the cage and ship. I missed the third group, so I was attacked from 3 sides and one of them had a grenade launcher which mangled the team. I got through this by the skin of my teeth. One of the group got knocked out unconscious and I had 5 minutes to bring them up. This is the only time I used the resuscitation skill and it was totally worth it. I let the prisoners out and we are finally reunited with Annie. Bee asks what happened to her. It boils down to their father initially hiding her, then telling her to run. She escaped but ended up in unfamiliar territory. Luckily, Wesley and other people from the government found her, and as soon as she started thinking she's safe, the shadows attacked them. Shortly after the arrival in Vesseltown, they injected her with something. It might be poison or something else. There must be an antidote, but where to look for it? Annie says she knows where their HQ is, so you can start there. The Shadow Leader is also in HQ, so he should have the antidote. Annie has no idea why they took so many prisoners, and they probably thought she worked for the GNO. At first, the GNO people treated her well, but over time, things got worse. They stole her food rations and poured water over their heads because it was hot. She didn't complain because some were having it way worse than her because of the poison they got injected with. Getting out of here won't be easy. Nearby the team was dropped, there are two people, Craig and Brad. Speaking with them reveals that Andrew is not responding. He probably left for the museum. So, how do we get out? Craig has been making something like a small helicopter. It's very janky, but it might work to take someone up. He only needs a rotor blade and a thick windshield. Not that far away, there is a crashed helicopter and some abandoned cars where you'll find the items. Once you give them to the guys, you need to wait a whole 24 in-game hours for them to finish. Just go to sleep. Bee gets inside and manages to crash land somewhat safely, and then brings up the team and Craig. Craig is now the new crane operator. I don't know why anyone would want to live down there, where you might get stuck if the crane goes down and you are easy prey to the bandits. The next stop is Shadow Command, base of the shadows. The team arrives at Grimside, a GNO soldier left to die on a pole. Bee knows that the battle will be hard, so he asks Annie to hide somewhere. She knows she will be a hindrance and agrees. You got a choice to leave someone with her or fend for herself. I chose to leave her alone because I expected difficult fights ahead. We need to find a way in, so Bee started asking the locals. One in particular is giving us a hint. Angus is a salesman and agrees to tell us who knows the way in if we bring him tobacco. We need to find 3 teens. They can help us. It doesn't take that long. They are kinda sad because they lost their pet donkey. They will tell us how to get inside easily if we can get them a new pet. In one of the houses in the settlement, there is a woman with 2 Komodo dragons pets. She'll give you one, but you need to bring them food to show that you will be a responsible owner. I get some from the vehicle, and this part of the quest is done. Then we need to walk back to the 3 guys with the dragon following us. He is slow as fuck. I just went there and waited for him. It took him 3.5 minutes. They are extremely happy, and as agreed, they will tell us how to enter the base. We need to get some overalls to pretend to be garbage collectors. This is how they sneak in for fun. The overalls are nearby in a wooden crate, and so it's not easy. The guards didn't even notice that the new garbage men were heavily armed. There is no point of exploring anywhere. There is nothing to loot. You need to go to the center and trigger a cutscene. Annie shows up. She got attacked by hyenas, but her injuries are not that serious. I felt bad about leaving her, especially after what happened. By the way, how did she manage to get in so easily and I had to do so many steps to do the same? It's never explained. And then the commander of the shadows shows up. I'm not gonna let the whole exposition play out. It's 18 minutes long. The cutscene is 11 minutes, but there are a few things after it that bring the total to 18.
Naja, zum Glück sieht die Wunde nicht weiter schlimm aus.
Und? Bist du zufrieden mit deinem Werk?
Ich bin erst zufrieden, wenn ich jeden einzelnen von euch Kreaturen zur Hölle gejagt habe. Wer bist du?
Mein Name ist Abel. Ich bin das Oberhaupt der Menschen, die du Schatten nennst. Und bevor du mich jetzt tötest, solltest du wissen, dass ein anderer an meine Stelle treten wird. Und tötest du ihn, wird wieder ein anderer folgen. Euer Feldzug gegen uns wird keinen Erfolg haben. Und mein Volk wird seinen berechtigten Platz in der Biosphäre erhalten.
This is all to set a new direction for the story, so let's get into it. It's a cliché, but it's not all what it seems. No one knows at this point why they are fighting against the shadows. They are mutants, but not by accident. After the catastrophe, scientists tried to develop a vaccine that would make people resistant to UV light, making it mandatory for all newborns, but they didn't test it before deploying it. It did what it says on the tin, but the side effects were brutal. The less severe was the grey-colored skin. The most devastating is the life expectancy, at best 35 years, but most die between 15 and 25. This is not a justification for taking hostages. Abel says it was Hayes who started the attack. He's carrying out ethnic cleansing. Hayes wants all of them exterminated. Then he described the president as full of hatred, preserving the human race, keep human blood red, etc. Combine this with the uniform and this started to sound awfully familiar. But probably the biggest reason is the biosphere. Before the disaster, NASA was experimenting with creating artificial living space which doesn't depend on the outside world. Clean air, grass, trees, energy, and dome to protect the place. place, a small paradise. The Shadows discovered a biosphere and started rebuilding it, but couldn't finish the work. The goal was to provide access to everyone, not just for the Shadows, but Hayes wants it for the pure-blooded and the strong. This means no old, no sick, no weak people in the biosphere. Hayes managed to push the Shadows out of the dome, so they organized themselves and put up a fight. B asks, then why did they attack innocent people and villages? Abel responds, have you seen us doing it? They only targeted Hayes people and the GNO, the rest is rumors spread by Hayes. B is understandably pissed. They kidnapped Annie and injected her with something, to which Abel says she was probably with GNO people when all this happened. Basically a mistake. Only GNO people are injected. He says he's sorry, but the chemicals are intended to turn people into shadows. Their scientists further developed the vaccine and now it will work on adults too. He can't express how sorry he is, but as a consolation she would have a good life with the shadows. They are not monsters. This means there is no antidote. You have two choices, vow to kill him or understand that what happened to Annie and accept her fate. At this moment I remember the intro, which depicted a mother and her daughter in a nice looking place and immediately realized what I should choose. B acknowledges her fate, so does Annie, and she quickly says that the shadows are now her people. Just as B is telling Annie that he will continue to look for an antidote, Hayes appears out of nowhere. It seems that everyone walks into the base with no issues, the least secure compound in any game I've ever played, considering what follows next. He gives credit to Abel for his speech but asks B to kill him, gaslighting him with what they did to his sister. Annie opposes to that, while B turns his gun on Abel. She begs him to reconsider. Hayes is pushing your buttons, demanding you to take action. Again, the same choice as a couple of minutes ago. I chose not to shoot. B lets Hayes go, who says he will get hanged for that. He gets on a dirt bike, turns back and
Das wirst du bereuen, ich schwöre, das wirst du bereuen! Niemand verrät den Präsidenten!
Some time passes and Abel and his people manages to save your life and nurse you back to full health. However, you can't stay in bed any longer. B goes outside and thanks Abel for what he did. They forgive each other, but there is a more pressing matter. To finish the biosphere, the Shadows need scientists who worked on it before the catastrophe. In fact, he has found few who are still alive and kidnapped them and forced them to do the job. There are three people who can finish the work. Two, Professor Banks and Dr. Roland, are with them, but the third, Dr. Lawrence, is still in Hayes' custody. The two who work with the Shadows are taken to the hidden cavern because they know Hayes will look for them. It's an underground town built to keep women and children safe, while others are fighting the GNO. Somehow Hayes knows the location and we need to get the scientists to safety. Abel and Annie will join the team, but you can't control them. They just follow you until the hidden cavern. It's quite funny to see them running after the vehicle because they can't enter. After quite a lot of trekking and crossing a chasm with a rope shot by a makeshift giant ballista, the team arrived at the hidden cavern to find they were too late. Hayes people plow through it. There are a lot of dead and wounded people. Annie and Abel are trying to tend the injured while we're trying to save the scientists trapped under rocks from an explosion. Samson, the militia chief who directs the workers, says there is a drill machine but it's broken. This is our current goal. I find the machine and the distributor is gone, plus there is no fuel. There's a full can near the field hospital. I'm not sure where to get the distributor. Samson suggests the armory, but none of my skills would allow me to enter it. Zeke, the guy who maintains the armory, lost the key. I know for a fact you can blow up the door, but I'm not sure what conditions are required to do it. However, Francis from the team is a top tier mechanic. No one can drive the machine, so Samson asks you to look for Hale. At this point, this is just spotting. There is no point to this part of the quest. We get him and he frees the people. But we did hit a rock, pun intended. The scientists are nowhere to be found. Only one of the Shadows, Jacob, a scientist, comes out. He tells us the GNO soldiers kidnapped the scientists and are most likely taken to the biosphere. He doesn't know where it is, but has one of their backpack. Inside is a memory module where the two scientists kept some kind of data, along with a weird looking helmet. We need to find Hyde, who will probably know more. He likes to tinker with stuff like this. We find him and he says the memory stick is a cerebral memory module and the helmet has cortical interface. Before the catastrophe, certain people, probably very rich, installed these directly in their brains, essentially a computer inside your head. And we have all the items to do the same thing. We need to see what's stored in the memory module and we do the only thing we can. Put the helmet on, which contains the implant that needs to read the information. It does this by drilling a hole into your temple. Nice. Hyde helped us with the whole process and now we know where the biosphere is. On our way out, a woman stopped us. She says the GNO soldiers didn't know the Wastelands well, got caught in a sandstorm and sought shelter in a cave. they are probably still there because the storm is still raging outside. She knows a safer way to reach the cave, so we let her lead the way. And indeed, they are there. After a brief skirmish, Bee chats with one of the soldiers. She threatens the lives of the scientists unless we let them go and keep their weapons. Bee is not having it. Instead of killing them, I chose to let them go, but keep their weapons. Once she agrees, you can still have an option to kill them. I tried it, but what was annoying was that they need to pick up their weapons to let us shoot them, losing the advantage. It's easier just to let them go. We talked to Dr. Jeff Rowland and he gave us some more info on how the biosphere works. He also says the idea was to install it on Mars to make it livable. Once the scientists are secured, it's time for the most difficult part of the game, which is quite fitting. I got my ass handed to me. In terms of the environment, the biosphere is more of a wasteland. There are a few structures, mostly bushes, grass and few trees. It's all about shooting. The reason why I found it difficult is the sheer number of enemies that start running towards you once you fire a shot. And they are armed to the teeth. I haven't seen some of their weapons, but once I got them, the tables turned. Another reason might be that I wasn't all that prepared. Up until this point, I barely had any problems dealing with the NPCs. At the beginning of the game, I faced challenges, but once I started getting better equipment, firefights were less tense, with few exceptions. The way I managed to overcome the small army in the biosphere is by cheesing it. You see, nothing is stopping you from traveling to a different map, restocking supplies and taking a nap. By pure chance, this split the forces. That way I didn't have to engage with too many NPCs. There is one option that could potentially save you a lot of headaches. Once you dropped into the map, if you go right, you'll face a group of soldiers who don't want to fight you. They just want to live and call Hayes the devil. If you pass the speed check, they will fight on your side. Unfortunately, I couldn't take advantage of this, so I let them go. We find the kidnapped scientist, Dr. Lawrence, and send him outside the biosphere with the other scientists until we clear the space. The final push made me try a different approach. During my playthrough, I had one of my squad members, Ivana, as my designated sniper. She also runs like Sonic. The sniper I gave her 1 or 2 shots an enemy. Ivana is a beast. By pure chance, the last session I had to take over was where Hayes is hiding. The site I decided to approach also benefited me. It's a flat ground, so I just let Ivana rip and tear, while the others stand their ground and wait for someone to come closer. It wasn't a foolproof one. Francis, my driver, was killed in action. Rip, my favorite mechanic. I could load the save file and try to keep everyone alive, but after 47 hours, I'm fine with one guy down. Hayes comes out of his hiding place to face us. Of course, he is quite delusional. He is the savior of humanity and blah blah. One final choice. Let him go alone in the desert or end him. There is only one option.
Komm raus, Hayes! Du bist am Ende!
Am Ende? Meinst du?
Siehst du das anders? Dein Plan ist gescheitert. Du wirst die Biosphäre nicht kontrollieren. Zumindest nicht, solange ich hier bin.
Du hast nichts verstanden. Es geht nicht um Kontrolle. Es geht darum, die Menschheit vor dem Aussterben zu bewahren. Nur die Stärksten überleben. Das ist ein Naturgesetz und war schon immer so. Ich bin der Retter der Menschheit. Du bereitest ihren Untergang vor.
Falsch. Ich habe keine Lust auf dein dummes Gequatsche und du bist ein verdammter Idiot. Und jetzt nimmst du besser Abschied von dieser Welt.
Du willst mich wirklich kaltblütig ermorden? Das kannst du nicht machen.
Doch, kann ich. Und ich werde heute Nacht gut schlafen. Sei zufrieden, dass ich dir einen schnellen Tod gönne.
Du stirbst vor mir!
The story is wrapped in a nice little bow. There's a lot to be done, and the scientists Annie and Abel want you to be their next leader, and then a nice callback to a minor character from the earlier parts of the game.
Oh Mann, ey! Endlich bin ich richtig!
Was zum... Du bist doch der Typ mit der Zeitmaschine. Wo kommst du denn her?
Woher schon? Aus einer anderen Zeit? Logisch, oder? Genauer gesagt, aus der Zukunft, ey. Hast es ja weit gebracht, muss ich sagen. Ich meine, du wirst es weit gebracht haben. Naja, wie auch immer, irgendwann demnächst. Junge, hätte ich dir gar nicht zugetraut, ey. Aber ich bin jetzt lieber still. Was dir die Zukunft bringt, das sollst du schon lieber selbst rausfinden. Das Raumzeitkontinuum bricht sonst zusammen und so weiter, ey.
Du bist durch die Zeit gereist? Und was bitte willst du jetzt hier in der Biosphäre?
Warum glaubt mir bloß immer niemand? Natürlich bin ich durch die Zeit gereist, ey. Und natürlich habe ich auch einen guten Grund, hier zu sein. Von hier aus wird schließlich alles beginnen, ey. Nett habt ihr's hier. Nur alles ein bisschen klein, ey. Schon mal Gedanken darüber gemacht, wie man größere und vor allem mehr Biosphären errichten könnte, ey? Ich hab da schon so einige Ideen.
Du...
Was schaust du denn so? Keine Angst, es wird alles gut, ey. Aber es gibt viel zu tun.
Und nur weil unser Anführer das alles gemacht hat, leben wir heute hier und nicht draußen im Sand?
So ist es. Wie ich dir gesagt habe, wir verdanken ihm sehr viel.
Meinst du, ich kann ihn mal treffen?
Sicher. Warum nicht?
Gut, dann werde ich ihn nämlich fragen.
The 4 Last Days of Gaia is probably one of the most fascinating games I've ever made video about, both as a game and as a way it came to be. Silverstyle came in strong with the success of Soldiers of Anarchy and wanted to go bigger and better, simultaneous worldwide release, complex world and interactions with the NPCs, more vehicles, even flying machines. In other words, reactive world in their own in-house engine. But those ambitions are probably what dragged them down, plus the game was self-funded. The release was a mess, but over the next 2 years, they managed to salvage the project with 2 new releases that offer vast improvements across every aspect of the game, including voice acting, albeit only in German. The real heroes are the fans, who catalog everything in the game in a nice, neat, tight package for everyone to use and of course translate. This was probably a grueling task with the amount of dialogue, descriptions, menus, etc. So kudos to those involved. The one thing that is, I wouldn't say bad, but forgettable is the story. The setting is very interesting, plot doesn't raise the stakes much. It feels flat. There are 3 distinct points where it shifts to a different direction, but it's predictable in my opinion. I find the side quests more interesting. Those smaller stories are the heart of the game and what kept me engaged. However, all this didn't make me skip all dialogue just so I can get back to shooting. I found it interesting enough. If the story doesn't grab you, everything surrounding the gameplay should. It's what makes the Wastelands worth experiencing. A massive variety of weapons and gadgets, and combining them with crafting, a mix of different healing options, and vehicles as a mobile storage. Let's not forget the amount of skills the team can have, allowing you, at certain points, a different approach to a situation or giving you access to loot that you'll never otherwise see. My unwillingness to invest in speech didn't allow me to reach my goal faster, but I saw quests that I would miss otherwise. If you enjoy the gameplay, it's worth replaying. There is enough here to satisfy your curiosity. The gameplay doesn't evolve much during the whole game, there is still enough variety, but if you like Diablo or Dungeon Siege, you know the joy comes from the loot. However, it still has its challenges and decision making. I wonder if it would have made an impact if the developer released it in a less broken state and worldwide. Just in November 2004, some heavy hitters were released. At the end, whatever faults the game had initially were fixed in subsequent releases, which makes it way more enjoyable and worth your time, and it plays wonderfully on Windows 11. If you don't mind reading, you enjoy your time with the fall.